I heard a woman say recently that therapists are less inclined to help their clients heal quickly because of money, because they want to stretch out as long as they can to see their clients. And I was just like, I don't know. That just seems harmful. Hey, welcome to Spirit Soul Sense, information for your soul. I am Shareece. I'm also a clinical psychologist. That's what I do in the day. I love it. I love it. Oh, I love it. It's a dream come true. So when people are slandering the profession, and really the thing that sets a psychologist apart from, master's level therapists is psychologists can do psychological evaluations, which master's level therapists can't do. I specialize in psychological assessments, but right now I'm just doing therapy. And I think it's important to have this distinction between who is better suited for coaching and who's better suited for, clinical interventions, psychotherapy. I think one of the things that sets it apart is severity. So let's say we're talking about anxiety, right? A lot of people have anxiety. I myself, sometimes I exist with a low level of anxiety. I do not, as they say, meet criteria for a diagnosis in our DSM, our diagnostic manual. So our diagnostic manual, has a list of symptoms that a person has to have to say they have a disorder, and then they always include that the person's functioning needs to be impaired to meet criteria for a diagnosis. So if you have anxiety and you don't have any problems at work, you don't have any problems in your relationships, then you don't meet criteria for a diagnosis, which means you may not be a suitable candidate for therapy. You would probably do well with buying someone's anxiety course or having a coaching specialist who handles people with anxiety to help them function a little bit better in their activities. Someone who has an anxiety disorder, it's very clear because they may be having poor grades at school. They may be missing days on the job. They are unable to carry out, regular activities that they should be able to do based on their developmental age. I think thinking everyone needs a therapist, right, has maybe influenced our mind to think that there's certain people who really need a therapist. I think every single person can benefit from therapy. And if you have insurance and your therapist wants to bill insurance, they're probably going to diagnose you with an adjustment disorder, because lots of people can meet criteria for adjustment disorder and not have the stigma of a bigger diagnosis on them. I think it's important to acknowledge that mental health disorders are significantly impairing to someone's daily life. It's very, very hard to deal with. I think bipolar is often seen as a sort of debilitating disorder. It's a lifelong disorder, and it's something that's not really controllable. Not really. It's something that's manageable, but it's not controllable because of the way the disorder manifests. It's like your brain is on the fritz. Your brain is doing some things that brains do not typically do, and people around you notice. And you might need to go to the hospital. You might be having suicidal thoughts. Like, those are things that a coach cannot help with. They're not trained to help with those kind of emergencies or the severity of a disorder. Similarly, someone with schizophrenia, if they are having an actively psychotic episode, what is a coach going to do for them? Help them create a goal to go to the hospital? What else? Coaches are very goal oriented, and so they help you achieve things. You have to be functioning at a certain level to benefit from a coach. Coaches generally help people who are baseline typical, Like if you compare other people, you're working, you're going out with friends, you're doing okay, but you want to reach another level. You're hoping to achieve another thing. You want to start a business. You want to make more money. You want to make more friends. But not that you have avoidant personality disorder and you're going to see a coach. If you have avoidant personality disorder, you literally have no friends. You have nobody, and you don't even know how to interact with these things. A therapist, a psychologist are specifically trained to know how to deal with these kind of folks. I'm not saying a coach wouldn't help, but when we're talking about the severity of disorders, what is a coach going to do? What's a coach going to do? There are a lot of trauma coaches. I almost did air quotation. There are a lot of trauma coaches. And I think everyone, if you've gone through childhood, you've made it, you've endured some kind of trauma. However, when therapists are talking about doing trauma work, they are generally looking at molestation. They're looking at you saw someone die in front of you. They're looking at drug abuse, addiction, right? A lot of coaches are not specifically dealing with drug abuse. Like it takes a certain skill set to be able to master these populations. And that skill set is generally not achieved by the certification that coaches take. I think coaches are great. I have a financial coach, advisor, like I have one of those right now. But I'm not sure that I would work through clinical work with someone who didn't have any clinical experience. And so there are a lot of coaches who have clinical experience. I would say they probably know what they're doing. They just wanted more money. Coaches can charge more and not have to do the limits of insurance paneling or what you call it, or even like there's a lot of rules that go around the therapist client relationship to make sure that the client is safe. And some, if you say you're a coach, then you're not doing clinical work, or else, the government, the licensing boards will come and get you. So if you say you're doing coaching, you can charge more and you can avoid some of those limitations that go into doing clinical work. I think coaches have an appropriate time and level of severity for working with people. I think what therapists do cannot be replicated because it's not, how do you say? Because, this woman was selling a course, and I admire this woman, I respect her. She's selling a course. She has a business to run. She's selling a course, and it's a healing course. But the kinds of people who would benefit from her healing course are at baseline typical. Or they have, specific disorders. Because I'm just thinking about someone who has severe depression or even moderate to severe depression who cannot get out of bed, who have a plan on how they're going to kill themselves. Her healing course is not really going to help. Not really. Not really. Going to see a pastor might help because I think disorders have a spiritual component in them. This is a spiritual trauma. I think being connected with your religion or your spirituality can help significantly whatever you're experiencing, because I really do think a lot of disorders are a disconnection from God. And so you have symptoms that manifest because you're not connected to what is happening in the world around you, to people. And everything in our world is an expression of God, Godness, God energy. And so if you're not connected to those things, then you're going to experience, really negative symptoms. But to say that coaches and therapists are interchangeable, I think is an inappropriate statement for folks to make. And I think if you are experiencing significant anxiety, depression, psychosis, OCD, significant difficulty in your interpersonal relationships, there's only so much that a coach can do. There's only so much that self-help programs can do. And there is a lot of benefit in seeing a professional, seeing a mental health professional, because they are going to talk to you and interact with you in a way that a coach doesn't know how, or that a coach doesn't think is beneficial. Because if you think of Iyanla Vanzant.
Minimize it. I got pictures of your handprints around my neck.
I was abandoned, and I do have this anger in my heart.
We tear our men down and then wonder why they don't make good husbands and fathers. Mothers destroy sons. You broke your kids. I just never thought that what I did would cause all of this.
Iyanla Vanzant is a coach. She's not a mental health professional. And you can look and see, there was this young girl who was kidnapped, and they decided they wanted to put that on TV. So she was kidnapped as a baby and ended up being raised by what she thought was her mother, but it's really like your kidnapper mother, and her real mother that is significant trauma that her coaching made worse. Because a therapist, and she has now therapists who are there on the spot, who are there to help people. Because even in, therapy, there are these, weekender, intense therapy groups, intense therapy sessions where people are going hours and hours to learn something. It's been shown that those changes do not last if there is no follow-up treatment. Follow-up treatment is very important, especially if you have a disorder that's very much impairing your functioning. That's what I have to say about that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Remember to like, subscribe, share this video with someone you think it may help, and thank you for watching.